Hi guys, welcome to another class of Spain facing the 21st century. And today we're gonna take it back where we left it. We're gonna talk about the second half of this class, so to say, on the Socialist Era. Remember, it goes between 1982 and 1996. Last class we talked about interior policy, we talked about how we had to readjust economically, we talked about the leadership of Felipe González, and we talked about the hegemony in the elections that resulted on PSOE being a dominant party, and the Spanish system being considered a dominant party system. Today we're going to be talking about three different topics. We're going to talk about foreign affairs, that you will see that they had a connection with the economic policy itself. We'll talk about the dirty war against ETA. Remember this terrorist organization that we talked plenty about in class. And last but not least, we're going to talk about corruption in this government. And you can imagine that being 14 years in a row in office, this results in a degree of corruption that is rampant, that is massive. So first thing we're going to address in the first of the three videos of today is going to be foreign affairs. And two international organizations clearly determine the foreign affairs agenda of these Spanish socialist governments. One of them being the European Union, the other one being NATO, for two very different reasons. Both, Spain joined both organizations. Actually, NATO we'll see in a second, but we joined early 80s, and European Union we joined in 1986. But you will see that these pretty much determine the action of the government and the agenda of the government. So when we talked about NATO, you have to be reminded that Spain joined NATO in 1982, May 1982. That was before the elections that Felipe González won during the fall of 1982. So this was a decision made by the previous center-right government that actually Felipe González and PSOE campaigned against. If you look at this poster, it says OTAN de entrada no. So entrance in NATO, no. And they're playing with words there, because on the one hand they're saying entering NATO, no, but at the same time is at first, no. We have to vote this in a referendum. So actually, they campaigned against NATO. Actually, during the 1982 campaign, one of the promises that Felipe González made was actually reconsidering Spain membership at NATO, which was very controversial for foreign affairs, if you think about it, because this had never happened. Just remember the joint during the spring of 82. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, during the fall, you got a new government that was campaigning against the membership itself. So this was very controversial. However, once Felipe González took office, the situation completely changed in a sense. Actually, during his fourth-year term, Felipe González had to deal, on the one hand, with the internal pressure of his own voters that actually kept him to his promise of, wait, you promised us you were going to leave NATO. And on the other hand, you have the international society, and international society looks for stability. And suddenly, how do you have this actor that is walking just in the opposite direction? So what was the in-between way that Felipe González found? This was actually calling for a referendum. In 1986, Felipe González asked Spanish people whether they wanted to remain members of NATO or not. And you can imagine what he campaigned for. He actually campaigned for, yes, we want to remain in NATO. And actually, if you read the question, you have this on the PowerPoint, you will see that actually the wording is pretty clear that they wanted, yes, remain in NATO to win desperately, because that was the new political option of the government, even though the voters, when they supported him in 1982, voted for something different. At least he promised something different at that time. So eventually, look at the wording, because it's very interesting. You can do this at home. I'm not going to read it now, because I don't want to make this video too long. But very interesting also to read the different terms that he included in the question. So 1986, a referendum, the outcome of the referendum by, more or less large enough majority, the answer was yes to remain. So 53% of the vote said yes, 56% said yes, we have to remain, 43% against. And actually, if you look at the poster once again, the wording is very interesting. El interés de España vota referéndum permanencia Alianza Atlántica. So we are not calling it NATO, OTAN, anymore. We're calling it Atlantic Alliance. and it's the national interest. So González had to introduce new terminology there to try to distinguish his position in 1982 to his position in 1986. So eventually the referendum remained won. So Spain from that time, from 1982 when they joined, is always been a member of NATO. The other international organization that Spain became a member of in the early 80s, well 86, is the European Union. Spain requests to be a part of the European Union in 1977. Actually, before that, we had requested it, but one of the requirements to be part of the European Union is to be a democracy. At least from the very beginning, I mean, when the European Union was created, by the 6 founding members, all of them were full democracies, and that's why also Greece, Portugal, and Spain joined afterwards. So in 1977, Spain is already transitioning to be a democracy. We already had we had legalized the Communist Party. We had new legislation that actually passed, include the election to call for constitutional parliament, so to draft a new democratic constitution. So at that time, Adolfo Suarez, who was president of the parliament at that time already, he requests formally to be part of the European Union, and the European Union in 1979 accepts and engages in conversations with Spain, because actually don't think about joining the European Union as an immediate process. You have to fulfill certain requirements so you are able to adapt to being part of the European Union in the same condition that the other countries that are already members are. And what were these requirements? And this is very interesting. First thing, democratic values. And this had to be shown on the one hand, Spain joining certain international treaties of respecting human rights, also the Council of Europe, which is a different international organization that works in the line of respecting human rights and rule of law. And also, well, I mean, the pathway that Spain had to continue validating, consolidating its democratic institutions. And more importantly, the requirements that were tougher and that were actually discussed over 6 years were the economic ones. And 3 particular fields were important here. First of all, agriculture. Believe it or not, agriculture is a great part of the European Union. It takes most of the European Union budget. The common agricultural policy is very important. And at that time, one of the key countries of the European Union, still one of the key countries right now, saw in Spain a clear competitor in agriculture, and this was France. And Spain could join the market, and it will result in an increase of 33% of the agricultural production of the European Union. Bear in mind that at this time we are almost perfectioning. We are in the way of creating the single common market, to terminating that project, and that will mean that goods could transit from one country to the other without any tariffs, without any border control, so to say. Another issue was industry. Remember that in the last class we talked about the industrial reconversion, that Spain industry was not competitive enough. It was not competitive enough to confront Germany, to confront the Benelux. It was not strong enough to confront France, Italy, or the United Kingdom. So Spanish industry, this was not very problematic. This was more about facing the reality that they could not subsidize any more than industry, because you were going to be competing against industries that were much more efficient and they will easily beat you. So, and that resulted in Spain dismantling most of the industry, as we mentioned in the last class. And last but not least, Spain had to introduce new taxes to pretty much encompass it to European regulations. For example, in Spain at that time, we didn't have a VTA tax. Spain had to introduce it to eventually join the European Union in 1986. So, as you can see, foreign affairs, Spain is pretty much finalizing that process of re-entering the international sphere. It does it joining NATO and joining the European Union. This being said, we're going to take a break now, and then we're going to continue talking about ETA and talking about GAL. Okay? Have a break. See you in a minute.